The flight that grounded an entire airline. You know that feeling when you're on a plane and something just feels wrong? When the energy shifts and you realize you're about to witness something that'll change everything. Well, 30,000 feet above the ground, on Flight 447, passengers were about to experience exactly that. They were about to watch a teenager fighting for his life while the very people meant to protect him turned their backs. And what happened next? It didn't just change one flight. It changed an entire airline forever. But here's what nobody knew in those first terrifying moments: that teenager wasn't just any passenger. And his father? His father was about to bring an entire aircraft down from the sky with a single phone call. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was a Tuesday morning at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Gate B-17. The usual chaos of travelers rushing, coffee in hand, dragging luggage, checking boarding passes. Among them were 3 young men. Brothers. The oldest was Marcus, 22, fresh out of college with that confident stride of someone who'd just conquered the world. The middle brother was Jamal, 19, still in university, always with his nose in a book or his phone. And then there was Malik. 15 years old. Quiet. Observant. Disciplined beyond his years. Malik wasn't like most teenagers. While his friends worried about video games and social media followers, Malik worried about something far more serious. He was a type 1 diabetic. Had been since he was 7 years old. 8 years of checking blood sugar levels. 8 years of insulin injections. 8 years of understanding that his body was a delicate balance that could tip into crisis at any moment. But Malik had learned to manage it. He was meticulous. His backpack always contained the essentials: glucose tablets, protein bars, apple juice boxes, a glucose monitor, insulin pens. His brothers joked that his bag was like a portable pharmacy. But they weren't really joking. They knew. They'd seen what happened when Malik's blood sugar dropped too low. The confusion. The trembling. The sweating. The very real danger of seizures or worse. On this particular morning, the brothers were heading home to Atlanta. First-class tickets. A gift from their father for Marcus's graduation. It was supposed to be a celebration, a smooth, comfortable flight. Marcus had even joked about it at breakfast, finally traveling like we're supposed to, right? No more cramped economy seats and stale pretzels. But here's where the first domino fell. Security. You know how airport security can be unpredictable? How sometimes you breeze through and sometimes it feels like they're searching for nuclear codes in your shoes? This was one of those days. The line was moving at a glacial pace. Malik kept checking his watch. He'd eaten breakfast at 6 a.m. It was now almost 9. He could feel that familiar sensation beginning, his body telling him it needed fuel. When they finally reached the scanning area, the TSA agent flagged Malik's backpack. She pulled it aside, unzipped it, and started removing items. The protein bars. The juice boxes. The individually wrapped snacks. "You can't bring these through," she said flatly. Malik's heart sank. "But I'm diabetic. Those are medical supplies. I have a letter from my doctor. The glucose tablets and insulin are fine. The food items need to go." Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Those aren't just snacks. My brother has type 1 diabetes. He needs to maintain regular food intake to manage his blood sugar." The agent barely looked up. "I understand that, sir, but liquids and gels over 3.4 ounces can't come through. And these juice boxes exceed that limit. You can purchase food after security." Jamal checked his phone. "We're boarding in 20 minutes. We won't have time." "That's not my problem, sir. Please move along. You're holding up the line." And just like that, Malik's safety net was gone. Thrown into a trash bin along with confiscated water bottles and forgotten pocket knives. Marcus put his hand on Malik's shoulder. "It's okay. We're flying first class. They'll have food service. Good food. We'll get you sorted as soon as we board." Malik nodded, but there was a tightness in his chest. He checked his glucose monitor. 98 milligrams per deciliter. Within normal range, but trending downward. He had maybe 2 hours before he'd need to eat. The flight was scheduled for 90 minutes. It should be fine. Should be. They boarded the plane, and for a moment, everything seemed perfect. The first-class cabin was spacious, comfortable. Leather seats that actually had legroom. The brothers settled into their row, Marcus at the window, Malik in the middle, Jamal on the aisle. A flight attendant appeared. Her name tag read Vanessa. She had that polished, professional look, hair in a perfect bun, makeup immaculate, smile practiced. But there was something in her eyes. Something cold. "Welcome aboard, gentlemen," she said, her voice sweet but somehow insincere. "Can I get you anything before we take off?" Marcus leaned forward. "Yes, actually. My brother here is diabetic. He needs to eat regularly to maintain his blood sugar. TSA confiscated his snacks, so we were hoping we could get some food service started a bit early." Vanessa's smile tightened. "Food service begins 30 minutes after we reach cruising altitude. That's our standard protocol." "I understand," Marcus said, keeping his tone pleasant. "But this is a medical situation. He just needs something simple, crackers, a sandwich, anything really." "Sir, I just explained our policy. Food is served on schedule. No exceptions." Jamal jumped in, sensing the tension. "Look, we're not trying to be difficult. But Malik literally needs to eat to stay healthy. Can you make an exception just this once?" Vanessa's expression shifted. The fake smile disappeared entirely. "Gentlemen, I've been doing this job for 12 years. Everyone has a reason they need special treatment. If I made exceptions for everyone, I'd never get anything done. You'll receive your meal when everyone else does." She turned sharply and walked away before any of them could respond. The brothers exchanged glances. Malik checked his monitor again. 92 milligrams per deciliter. Still okay, but dropping faster than he'd like. "It's fine," Malik said quietly. "I can wait. It's only 90 minutes. But Marcus wasn't convinced. He'd seen his little brother in a hypoglycemic crisis before. 4 years ago, at a school basketball game. One moment Malik was cheering, the next he was on the floor, unconscious. The ambulance. The emergency room. Their mother's tears. Marcus had promised himself he'd never let that happen again. The plane took off. Malik tried to distract himself by looking out the window, watching Chicago shrink beneath them. But he could feel it starting. That light-headed sensation. The beginning of what diabetics call the drop. 30 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign dinged off. Marcus immediately pressed the call button. Vanessa appeared, and this time there was no pretense of friendliness. "Yes. We need food for my brother. Now. His blood sugar is dropping." "I told you already, sir. Food service hasn't started yet." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm asking you, as politely as I can, to please bring my brother something to eat. Anything. A bag of pretzels. A cookie. Anything with carbohydrates. And I'm telling you, sir, for the 3rd time, that we have procedures. Everyone will be served shortly." Jamal pulled out his phone, showing Vanessa an article about diabetic emergencies. "Do you understand what can happen if his blood sugar drops too low? He could have a seizure. He could go into a coma. This isn't us being demanding, this is a genuine medical emergency waiting to happen." Vanessa's face flushed red. Her voice rose, loud enough that nearby passengers turned to look. "I am not going to be lectured by passengers about how to do my job. You're in first class, which apparently makes you think you can make demands and boss the staff around, but I'm telling you right now, that's not how this works." The cabin went quiet. All eyes were on them now. Marcus felt his face grow hot, but he kept his voice level. "This has nothing to do with what class we're sitting in. This has to do with my 15-year-old brother's medical condition. I'm not asking for champagne or caviar. I'm asking for basic food to prevent a medical crisis." "Then you should have come prepared." Vanessa shot back. "Not my problem that TSA took your snacks. Take it up with them when we land." She spun on her heel and marched toward the galley. An older woman across the aisle leaned over. "I have some crackers in my purse if you need them, sweetheart," she said to Malik. Before Malik could answer, Vanessa's voice cut through the cabin. "Please do not give them food. They are claiming a medical emergency to manipulate special treatment. I've seen this behavior before. The woman's mouth fell open in shock. Several passengers pulled out their phones, sensing something was very wrong. Malik checked his monitor again. 73 milligrams per deciliter. He was entering mild hypoglycemia territory. His hands were starting to tremble. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool cabin air. "Marcus," he whispered. "I don't feel good." And that's when everything started to unravel. Marcus shot up from his seat and strode to the galley where Vanessa was arranging meal trays. "My brother's blood sugar is at 73. That's dangerously low. I need you to give him food right now, or I'm going to report this to the FA when we land." Vanessa spun around, her face contorted with anger. "Are you threatening me? Because if you continue this aggressive behavior, I will have you restrained and arrested when we land." "Aggressive? I'm trying to save my brother's life." A male flight attendant emerged from the cockpit area. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," Marcus said, fighting to keep his composure. "My brother is diabetic, his blood sugar is dropping into dangerous levels, and she's refusing to give him food." The male attendant, his name tag said Robert, looked at Vanessa. "Can't we just give them something from the meal service?" "No," Vanessa said firmly. "They are being manipulative. I've dealt with passengers like this before. Give them special treatment and suddenly everyone has a medical emergency. We follow protocol or we lose all authority in this cabin." Robert hesitated, then nodded. "Sorry," he said to Marcus. "But she's the senior attendant on this flight. Food service will begin in approximately 15 minutes. Marcus felt something break inside him. Not anger, something deeper. Fear. Real, primal fear for his little brother's life. He walked back to his seat. Malik was slumped against the window now, his skin pale and clammy. Jamal was holding his hand, whispering encouragement. "How you doing, little bro?" Marcus asked, though he could see exactly how Malik was doing. "Dizzy," Malik mumbled. "Really, really dizzy. And my vision's getting blurry." The woman across the aisle had tears in her eyes. "This is insane," she said loudly. "That boy needs help. Someone needs to do something." A man 2 rows back called out, "I'm a physician. Can I take a look at him?" Before anyone could respond, Vanessa's voice boomed through the cabin. "Everyone please remain in your seats. We have trained professionals on board to handle any medical situations." The doctor stood anyway, making his way to Malik's row. He checked Malik's pulse, looked at his glucose monitor, then turned to face Vanessa with barely controlled fury. "This child is experiencing hypoglycemia. If you don't give him fast-acting carbohydrates in the next few minutes, he's going to lose consciousness. And if that happens at this altitude, we're looking at a potential seizure or worse. Give him food. Now." Vanessa's face was scarlet. "Sir, I need you to return to your seat immediately, or I will consider you to be interfering with crew member duties." The doctor just stared at her in disbelief. "You cannot be serious." But Vanessa was already on her phone, calling to the cockpit. "Captain, we have a disruptive situation in first class." Marcus pulled out his own phone. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage so pure it felt like fire in his veins. He scrolled through his contacts, found the number he needed. A number very few people had. His father's private cell phone. Now, here's what you need to understand. The brothers didn't talk much about their father's work. They'd been raised to be humble, to never name drop, to never use their father's position for personal gain. Their father had built his success from nothing, and he taught his sons that character mattered more than status. But right now, character wasn't going to save Malik's life. Marcus pressed dial. Thousands of miles away, in a corner office overlooking the Atlanta skyline, a phone buzzed. Isaiah Carter, founder and CEO of Skyward Airlines, picked it up without looking away from the quarterly report on his screen. "Marcus? You boys land already?" "Dad." Marcus's voice cracked. "Dad, we have a serious problem." Isaiah sat up straight. He knew his children. Marcus never called during flights unless something was catastrophically wrong. "Talk to me." And Marcus did. He laid it all out: the confiscated food, the repeated requests, Vanessa's refusal, Malik's dropping blood sugar, the threats, everything. His voice broke when he described how pale Malik looked, how he was barely conscious now. The silence on the other end of the line lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then Isaiah Carter's voice came through, and it was the voice of a man who had built an empire from scratch, who had fought through poverty and discrimination, who had revolutionized an industry, and who was now watching someone deny his son medical care on his airplane. "What's the flight number?" 447. "Stay on the line." Marcus heard his father's other phone ring, heard him bark orders: "Get me flight operations now. I don't care if you have to pull them out of a meeting. Now." Seconds later, "This is Carter. Flight 447. I want you to track it, I want you to contact the cockpit immediately, and I want you to get me the full crew roster for that flight." A pause. "I don't care what the protocol is. My 15-year-old son is having a medical emergency on that plane because your staff refuses to give him food. You have 30 seconds to get me connected to that cockpit, or I'm going to personally ensure that everyone involved in this catastrophe is cleaning toilets at a bus station by tomorrow morning." In the Skyward Airlines Operations Center in Atlanta, chaos erupted. Supervisors scrambled. Screens lit up with Flight 447's trajectory. Radio channels crackled to life. Back on the plane, the captain's radio buzzed with an unfamiliar code. Code Red Executive. He'd been flying for Skyward for 18 years and had never seen that code used. "Captain Hendricks, this is Operations Director Mills. We have a Code Red Executive situation on your aircraft." "Code Red? What's going on?" "The CEO's son is on your flight. He's experiencing a diabetic emergency and the cabin crew has refused to provide him with food. You need to address this immediately." Captain Hendricks felt his blood run cold. "Say again." "The CEO's son. Isaiah Carter's son. Diabetic crisis. Crew refusing assistance." The captain unbuckled and burst out of the cockpit. He took one look at Malik, now barely conscious, slumped against his brother, skin gray and slick with sweat, and then at Vanessa, who was standing in the galley with her arms crossed. "Why hasn't this passenger been given food?" His voice was deadly quiet. "Captain, they've been disruptive and demanding special treatment. I asked you a direct question. This passenger is clearly in medical distress. Why hasn't he been given food?" "We have protocols." "Protocols? You're talking about protocols while a child is potentially dying." The captain grabbed a meal tray, ripped it open, and rushed to Malik. "Son, I need you to drink this juice. Can you do that for me?" Malik's eyes fluttered. Marcus helped him sit up, held the cup to his lips. Malik managed a few sips, then a few more. The cabin was silent except for the hum of the engines. Every passenger was recording. Every passenger was witnessing. The captain's radio crackled again. "Captain Hendricks, this is CEO Carter." The captain picked up the handset. "Mr. Carter, sir, we're administering." "Is my son conscious?" "Yes, sir. Barely. We're getting sugar into him now." "How long until you land in Atlanta?" 4 to 2 minutes, sir." Another pause. Then, negative. "You're not continuing to Atlanta." "Sir, I'm issuing an emergency landing order. There's a regional airport 17 minutes from your current position. You're going to land there. Now. Medical personnel are already being dispatched." Captain Hendricks swallowed hard. An emergency landing would cost the airline hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rerouting passengers, compensations, fuel costs, airport fees. But the man on the other end of the radio owned the airline. "Yes, sir. Commencing emergency descent now." The captain made the announcement, "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a medical emergency, we're making an unscheduled landing at Richmond International Airport. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." Confused murmurs rippled through the cabin. Emergency landings were rare. They meant something serious. Vanessa's face had gone from red to white. She suddenly understood that she'd made a mistake. A catastrophic, career-ending mistake. The plane descended rapidly. Malik, still foggy but improving slightly from the juice, looked at his brothers. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't you dare apologize," Jamal said fiercely. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not one single thing." When the plane touched down 16 minutes later, it was met by a convoy that looked like something out of an action movie. Ambulances, fire trucks, and 3 black SUVs with the Skyward Airlines executive logo on the doors. The cabin door opened, and medics rushed in first. They checked Malik's vitals, gave him a glucose gel, started and 4. Behind them came 4 people in corporate suits. And then, striding up the jetway with the force of a hurricane, came Isaiah Carter himself. He'd been in a board meeting when Marcus called. He'd left that meeting without a word, told his assistant to charter a helicopter, and flown directly to Richmond. The board could wait. The quarterly reports could wait. His son could not wait. Isaiah Carter was a man who commanded respect the moment he entered a room. 6'3", broad-shouldered, with gray threading through his close-cropped hair. He'd grown up in poverty in Detroit, put himself through community college while working 3 jobs, and built Skyward Airlines from a single regional route into a national carrier. He'd faced down Wall Street investors who said he'd fail. He'd weathered economic crashes and industry downturns. But nothing had ever made him as furious as the sight of his youngest son, pale and weak, hooked up to and 4 in a first-class airline seat. On his airline. He went to Malik first. Knelt beside him. Took his hand. "Hey, buddy. Dad's here. You're going to be okay." Malik nodded weakly. "Sorry, ruined the flight." Isaiah felt his heart break and rage at the same time. "You didn't ruin anything, son. Not one thing. You hear me?" He stood, kissed Malik's forehead, then turned to face the cabin. His eyes found Vanessa. She looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. Isaiah's voice was controlled, but everyone in that cabin could hear the steel beneath it. "Which flight attendant denied my son medical care?" Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The captain stepped forward. "Sir, I believe there was a misunderstanding of..." "Captain Hendricks, I'm not asking you. I'm asking her." He pointed at Vanessa. "Step forward, please." Vanessa's legs seemed to barely hold her as she moved into the aisle. "What's your name?" "Vanessa. Vanessa Hartley, sir." "Ms. Hartley. My 15-year-old son, who has been managing type 1 diabetes since he was 7 years old, informed you multiple times that he needed food due to a medical condition. Is that correct?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face now. "And you refused him service? Not once. Not twice. But 3 times. Even after his brothers explained the situation. Even after his blood sugar level was shown to be dangerously low. Even after a physician on board told you this was a medical emergency. You refused. And then you threatened to have them arrested. Do I have that right?" I thought they were trying to manipulate. I didn't think." "You didn't think." Isaiah's voice dropped even lower. "You didn't think that maybe, just maybe, a teenager and his adult brothers might actually be telling the truth about a medical emergency? You didn't think that erring on the side of caution and human decency might be the right choice? You didn't think that a bag of crackers, which cost this airline literally 37 cents, might be worth more than your pride?" The cabin was dead silent. "Do you know what you could have caused today? My son could have seized. He could have gone into a diabetic coma. At 30,000 feet, where emergency medical intervention is extremely limited. He could have died. And all because you decided that protocol was more important than a child's life." Vanessa was sobbing openly now. Isaiah turned to his corporate team. "I want full statements from every passenger who witnessed this. I want the cockpit voice recording. I want every interaction logged." He turned back to Vanessa and Robert. "You're both suspended, effective immediately. Pending a full investigation, which I can already tell you will result in termination. You will never work for Skyward Airlines again. Furthermore, I'm filing a report with the FAA and the DOT. Your conduct today didn't just endanger a passenger, you endangered my child through deliberate negligence and gross disregard for human safety." He looked at the captain. Captain Hendricks, you responded appropriately once informed of the situation. You'll face no disciplinary action. But I want to know why it took a call from the CEO to get a diabetic child a glass of juice. The captain nodded stiffly, knowing his entire crew management procedures were about to be overhauled. Isaiah addressed the full cabin now. To every passenger on this flight, I apologize. This is not who Skyward Airlines is. This is not what we stand for. You've witnessed something today that should never happen on any airline, let alone mine. Every single one of you will receive a full refund for this flight, plus 10,000 travel credits. Your bags will be expedited, and we're arranging immediate transportation to Atlanta for anyone who needs it. He paused, his jaw tight. But more importantly, this ends today. What happened to my son will never happen to any passenger again. The medics carefully moved Malik to a stretcher. His blood sugar was stabilizing now, color returning to his face. As they wheeled him toward the exit, the cabin erupted in applause. Not polite applause. Not the scattered clapping you sometimes get when a plane lands. This was thunderous, sustained applause mixed with cheers. The older woman who'd offered Malik crackers was crying. The doctor who'd tried to help was nodding in approval. Phones were still recording, but now they were capturing something different, not a nightmare, but the beginning of justice. Before we continue with what happened next, if you've been gripped by this story, if you felt that anger and fear alongside Malik's brothers, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Because stories like this, stories about injustice being challenged and systems being changed, need to be heard. And I need to know you're with me. Subscribe, and let's keep holding people accountable together. Now, back to the story, because what happened in the days that followed changed everything. The videos went viral within hours. #Skyward Diabetes trending worldwide. #Justice for Malik. #CO stands up. The story was everywhere, CNN, Fox News, BBC, Al Jazeera. Social media exploded with reactions. Some praised Isaiah Carter for his swift action. Others criticized him for what they saw as an overreaction. Using his power to get special treatment for his kid, they said. But those voices were drowned out by the overwhelming majority who saw what had really happened. A father protecting his child, yes, but also a CEO facing a systematic failure in his own company. Because here's what Isaiah realized in the days that followed, as he reviewed policies and interviewed staff and dug deeper into Skyward's operational procedures, this wasn't an isolated incident. This was a symptom of a larger cultural problem. He found cases, dozens of them, where passengers with legitimate medical needs had been dismissed, ignored, or belittled. A woman with celiac disease who'd been given regular bread despite specifically ordering gluten-free. An elderly man with heart issues who'd been refused his medication from the overhead bin during turbulence. A mother whose child was having an asthma attack who'd been told to wait until we land to retrieve her inhaler. None of these cases had made the news. None had resulted in the CEO being called. They'd been logged as customer complaints and filed away. Isaiah spent 3 sleepless nights in his office, reading every complaint, watching training videos, reviewing employee handbooks. And he made a decision that would fundamentally reshape his airline. 1 week after the incident, Skyward Airlines held a press conference. Isaiah Carter stood at the podium, Malik beside him, healthy now, smiling shyly at the cameras. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm not going to waste time with corporate speak or PR spin. What happened on Flight 447 was unacceptable. Full stop. My son nearly died because employees of my airline chose policy over human decency. But as I've investigated further, I've realized that what happened to Malik wasn't an anomaly, it was the result of a corporate culture that prioritized operational efficiency over passenger well-being. He paused, letting that sink in. That culture ends today. Effective immediately, Skyward Airlines is implementing the following changes. First, all passengers with documented medical conditions will receive priority service, no questions asked. If someone says they have diabetes, celiac disease, severe allergies, or any other condition requiring specific accommodation, we believe them. Period. Second, all flight attendants, ground staff, and customer service representatives will undergo mandatory medical emergency training, including recognition of diabetic crises, allergic reactions, asthma attacks, and other common in-flight medical situations. Third, every aircraft in our fleet will now carry enhanced medical supplies, including glucose tablets, epinephrine autoinjectors, and allergy-safe snacks that can be provided immediately upon request. Fourth, we're establishing a 24/7 medical support hotline that crew members can call to consult with actual physicians during any suspected medical situation. No more guesswork. No more judgments based on whether someone looks sick enough. Fifth, any crew member who dismisses, belittles, or ignores a passenger's medical needs will face immediate suspension and mandatory retraining. Repeat offenses will result in termination. This is non-negotiable. He looked directly into the cameras. But here's the most important change: we're changing our mission statement. It used to be excellence in air travel. As of today, Skyward's mission is every passenger matters. Not every passenger in first class. Not every passenger who fits our protocols. Every single person who boards our aircraft matters. Their health matters. Their dignity matters. Their humanity matters. Isaiah put his arm around Malik. My son matters. And so does yours. And that woman sitting in 32B. And that businessman in first class. And that college student on their way to see family. They all matter equally. The press conference made headlines. But here's what didn't make headlines. What was even more remarkable: Isaiah Carter meant every word. Within 3 months, Skyward Airlines had retrained its entire staff. They brought in doctors, nurses, and medical professionals to run seminars. They created detailed response protocols for dozens of medical scenarios. They fired 12 employees who fought against the new policies, who insisted that passengers were just looking for handouts or faking conditions for attention. They also promoted dozens of employees who'd been quietly going above and beyond for years: the flight attendants who always made exceptions for medical needs, the gate agents who helped elderly passengers without being asked, the pilots who took extra time to ensure passenger safety. The cultural shift was real. 6 months later, on a Skyward flight from Los Angeles to Miami, a 10-year-old girl with a severe peanut allergy had an exposure reaction. The flight attendants immediately administered her EpiPen, moved her to first class where there was more space, and called the medical hotline. The plane made an emergency landing. The girl survived. Her mother wrote a letter to Isaiah Carter: "You saved my daughter's life. Not just today, but 6 months ago when you changed everything after what happened to your son." A year later, a Vietnam veteran with PTSD had a panic attack mid-flight. Instead of restraining him or treating him like a threat, the crew had been trained in de-escalation. They gave him space, spoke to him calmly, and one flight attendant sat with him for the remainder of the flight, talking about nothing in particular, just being present. He later wrote, "For the first time since coming home, someone in authority treated me like a human being having a hard time instead of a problem to be managed." These weren't isolated stories. They happened weekly. Then daily. Skyward became known as the airline that actually cared. Passenger numbers increased. Employee satisfaction increased. Yes, some flights took a little longer because crews spent more time attending to individual needs. Yes, it cost more to carry enhanced medical supplies and run additional training. But it was working. And Malik? He became an advocate. He started speaking at schools about diabetes management. He worked with Skyward's medical advisory board to improve their protocols. He turned a moment of crisis into a mission. On the 2-year anniversary of Flight 447, Malik, now 17, stood in front of a group of new Skyward flight attendants during their training. 2 years ago, I almost died on a plane, he said. Not because of my diabetes, but because someone chose not to believe me. Someone chose policy over compassion. Someone chose to see me as a demanding passenger instead of a scared kid who needed help. He looked around the room. You're about to do a job where you'll meet hundreds of people every day. Some will be easy. Some will be difficult. Some will test your patience. But I'm asking you to remember something. You don't know what anyone is going through. You don't know who's flying to say goodbye to a dying parent. Who's terrified of flying but forcing themselves on this plane. Who's managing an invisible illness that could kill them if not properly handled. He smiled. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Choose kindness. Choose to believe them when they say they need help. Because that choice could save a life. The room was silent. Then one flight attendant raised her hand. What happened to Vanessa? The flight attendant who refused to help you. Malik thought for a moment. I don't know, exactly. I know she was fired. I know she faced disciplinary action from the FAA. But you know what? I don't think about her much anymore. What I think about is this: she was probably taught that enforcing rules was more important than anything else. That passengers would take advantage if you showed flexibility. That you had to maintain authority above all else. He shook his head. Those teachings were wrong. And I hope she learned that. I hope she's somewhere now treating people better. I don't wish her harm. I just wish she'd made a different choice that day. It was an incredibly mature statement from someone who had every right to be bitter. The interviewer who'd asked the question teared up. You're an extraordinary young man. No, Malik said. I'm just a person who learned that systems only change when people demand better. And I had the privilege of having a father who could make that change happen. But it shouldn't take the CEO's son nearly dying for an airline to treat passengers humanely. It should just be the default. And here's my question for you, watching this video right now. Have you ever witnessed someone with a medical condition being dismissed or not taken seriously? Have you ever been that person? Drop your story in the comments. Because these conversations matter. Sharing our experiences matters. It's how we keep demanding better from the companies and systems that serve us. Today, Skyward Airlines is the third largest carrier in the United States. Their slogan, "Every passenger matters," isn't just marketing, it's a philosophy that's embedded in every policy, every training manual, every decision. They've won multiple awards for accessibility and passenger care. Other airlines have started adopting similar policies, though cynics say it's just to compete rather than out of genuine concern. Maybe that's true. But Malik doesn't care about the motivation as long as the outcome is that more people are treated with dignity and respect. Isaiah Carter is still CEO. He's older now, grayer, but he starts every company meeting the same way. Remember Flight 447. Remember that we're not just moving people from point A to point B. We're caring for human beings at their most vulnerable. Marcus finished law school and now works in patient advocacy, fighting for medical rights in public spaces. Jamal is in medical school, studying endocrinology, specializing in diabetes care. He wants to become the doctor he watched try to help his brother that day. And Malik? He's in college now, studying public policy. He wants to create legislation that protects passengers with medical conditions across all airlines, all forms of public transportation. He wants to make sure that what happened to him becomes legally impossible to happen to anyone else. The viral videos from Flight 447 have been viewed over 200 million times. They're used in medical schools and business schools and ethics classes as a case study in corporate responsibility and human decency. But for the Carter family, it's simpler than that. It's about the day they learned that sometimes, the worst moments in our lives become catalysts for the most important changes. It's about a father who chose his son over his bottom line, and discovered that the two didn't have to be in conflict. It's about employees who learned that compassion isn't weakness, it's strength. It's about a teenager who nearly died and then spent years making sure no one else would have to face that same neglect. Vanessa Hartley, the flight attendant at the center of the crisis, never worked in aviation again. She gave one interview, 2 years after the incident, where she said, "I was wrong. I don't have any excuses. I let my ego and my interpretation of rules override a child's safety. I think about Malik Carter every single day. I'm grateful he survived despite my failures. I can only hope that my mistake taught others what not to do." It was a rare moment of genuine accountability in a world that often dodges responsibility. Robert, the other flight attendant, was also terminated but fought the decision. He claimed he was just following Vanessa's lead as senior crew. The arbitration board didn't buy it. They ruled that any crew member who witnesses a medical emergency has an independent duty to act, regardless of hierarchy. Captain Hendricks is still flying for Skyward. He's now involved in pilot training, specifically in scenarios involving difficult crew dynamics and passenger medical emergencies. He tells every new pilot, the moment someone tells you there's a medical situation, you take control. You don't delegate. You don't wait. You act. The doctor who tried to help Malik that day was named Dr. James Chen. He was flying to Atlanta for a medical conference. After the incident, he partnered with Skyward to develop their medical training program. He's now on their permanent medical advisory board. He says it's the most meaningful work of his career, more than his years practicing emergency medicine, more than his research, more than his teaching. I couldn't help that boy in the moment because someone stood in my way, he said in an interview. But I can help thousands, maybe millions, of future passengers by making sure crew members know when to listen to medical professionals, when to trust passengers, when to prioritize health over everything else. The woman who offered Malik crackers, her name was Dorothy Richardson, a retired teacher, started a non-profit that provides medical travel kits to families with diabetic children. She partners with schools and community centers, distributing glucose monitors, insulin cooling packs, emergency snacks, and educational materials. She's helped over 50,000 families. She says she was haunted by how helpless she felt on that flight, and this is her way of making sure other people won't feel that same helplessness. Even passengers who were just witnesses on that flight were changed. Several became advocates for medical rights. One woman started a YouTube channel reviewing airlines based on their medical accommodation policies. Another man wrote a book about corporate responsibility in the service industry, using Flight 447 as his opening case study. A crisis witnessed by 100 people became a movement that touched millions. And that's the thing about moments that break us, they have the power to remake us too. 3 years after Flight 447, Skyward Airlines installed plaques in every aircraft galley. They're small, easy to miss if you're not looking. But every crew member knows they're there. The plaques read, Flight 447, May 2022. Every passenger matters. When in doubt, choose compassion. It's a reminder. A memorial. A promise. Malik saw one for the first time during a flight to visit Marcus in Washington, D.C. The flight attendant noticed him reading it and didn't realize who he was. That's about a kid who almost died because a crew member wouldn't give him food, she explained. Changed everything about how we do our jobs. I think about that kid every single shift. Makes me remember why I'm here, to take care of people. Malik smiled. I bet he appreciates that more than you know. He didn't tell her. He didn't need to. It was enough to know that the lesson had been learned, that the change was real, that his near-death experience had become a lighthouse guiding others away from those same rocks. That flight landed safely. Malik's blood sugar stayed stable the entire time. The crew checked on him twice without being asked. They'd seen his medical alert bracelet and proactively brought him snacks, juice, everything he might need. It was such a small thing. Basic human decency. But it was everything. When Isaiah Carter retires, which he says won't be for at least another decade, he's already decided what he once said at his farewell. Not about the company's growth. Not about profits or market share or industry awards. He wants them to talk about Flight 447. Because that was the day he learned that success isn't measured in shareholder returns. It's measured in the lives you protect, the dignity you preserve, the humanity you honor. That was the day his son almost died, and the day his airline was reborn. So here's what I want you to take away from this. The systems we interact with every day, airlines, hospitals, schools, corporations, they are run by people. And people can choose compassion or cruelty, flexibility or rigidity, humanity or protocol. When those systems fail us, we have two choices: accept it as inevitable or demand better. The Carter family demanded better. And an entire airline changed because one father refused to accept that policy mattered more than his son's life. That's the real story of Flight 447. Not the crisis. The transformation that followed. Every passenger matters. 3 words that should never have needed to be said, but now stand as a reminder of what happens when we forget the most basic truth of all. We're all just human beings trying to get through the day safely. And sometimes, all it takes is someone with the power to change things actually caring enough to use that power. Isaiah Carter cared. And because he did, millions of passengers now fly safer. Millions of families trust that if something goes wrong, someone will help. Millions of people with medical conditions can travel without fear of being dismissed or ignored. One flight. One boy. One father. One decision to choose people over policy. That's how the world changes. Not all at once. Not easily. But completely. Flight 447 changed everything. And maybe, if we pay attention, if we demand accountability, if we refuse to accept that cruelty and neglect are just the way things are, we can change everything too. The flight that grounded an entire airline is now the flight that lifts up every passenger who boards a skyward plane. And honestly, that's the ending this story deserved.